You're not tired because you're weak. You're tired because you're always on trial. Every room you enter, someone's evaluating you. Every silence you break, someone's twisting your words, and every time you try to explain yourself, you feel smaller. Less certain, more exposed. It's not that they misunderstand you, it's that they know they can make you react. And the moment you react, they win. You've lived your life defending your name, your intent, your heart. And still, you don't feel respected, you feel drained. But what if the problem isn't that people get you wrong? What if the problem is that you keep trying to make them right? Let me ask you this: when was the last time you let an accusation pass and said nothing, not because you had nothing to say, but because you didn't need to? Because the moment you learn to stay still, truly still, you stop being the one who needs defending, and you become the one they can't afford to provoke. The first time you stay silent, it doesn't feel powerful. It feels like you're losing. Your body tightens. Your mind races with 1,000 things you could have said. You want to scream, "I'm not what you think. I didn't mean it like that. But instead, you hold, and it feels like swallowing fire. That's how deep the conditioning goes. Since childhood, you were taught to explain yourself, to clear things up, to prove your intentions, but no one told you that explanation is submission. That in the courtroom of public opinion, the more you speak, the more guilty you appear. Ethan didn't know this either. At 28, he had just started gaining traction online, a rising voice in his space. Then came the comment, simple, sharp, misleading, a typical arrogant self-promo. Can't believe people still fall for this guy. Ethan panicked. His hands shook as he typed a reply. Not aggressive, just fair, just to clear it up. But it didn't clear anything, it exploded. The comment got replies, screenshots, threads, reactions. The more he tried to clarify, the messier it became. He went to bed nauseous, woke up to new attacks, and then he did something different. He stopped. No reply, no quote tweet, no post. Just silence. He felt like a coward at first. People were asking, why isn't he saying anything? Is it true? He sat in that discomfort for hours, then days, and something strange began to happen. The noise got louder, but it got dumber. They repeated themselves. They sounded desperate. The comments turned from attacks to confusion to boredom, and by the end of the week, the storm passed, not because it ended, but because he stopped feeding it. That's the first real power Ethan ever felt, not in how he spoke, but in how he didn't. Most people confuse discomfort with danger, but silence isn't danger, it's detox. You've been trained to react like it's survival. To jump into the fire because you're afraid of what might burn if you don't. But what burns is only your ego, and when you can sit in that flame, unmoving, watching it flicker without flinching, you realize something. They were never trying to understand you, they were trying to pull you into their storm. But when you stay still, you force them to face the silence they can't handle, and that's when your power begins. There's a moment that changes everything. Not because it's loud, but because it's the first time. You don't flinch. It happened on a Tuesday. Ethan was sitting in the boardroom of a midtown Manhattan office. The room was glass and tension. He had just pitched a new strategy, clean, bold, effective, but one of the senior partners, Michael, leaned back with a smirk. He didn't attack the idea, he attacked Ethan. "I'm not sure you've thought this through," Michael said. The tone wasn't curious, it was surgical. Everyone turned to Ethan, waiting, expecting him to justify, to scramble, to make it okay, and for a split second, Ethan felt that old instinct rise, the urge to explain, to smooth it over. To prove he wasn't careless, but something stopped him, not a strategy, not a trick, just a breath. A single, quiet inhale, and he didn't respond. He just looked steady, still. He let the silence sit. 2 seconds, 3, the room shifted. Michael adjusted in his chair. Someone across the table glanced down. The air got heavy, not with conflict, but with curiosity. Why didn't Ethan react? Was the comment off? Was Michael overstepping? Ethan stayed leaned back, didn't blink, didn't bite, and when he finally spoke, it was quiet. "Let's hear your version then." That was it. No defense, no edge, just a redirect, and it hit harder than any comeback, because now the pressure flipped. Michael had to explain. And as he did, it fell flat, long-winded, unfocused. The power had already shifted. You see, when you defend, you're playing by their rules, but when you stay calm, when you hold silence like a blade, you make the room question the attacker, not you. Ethan didn't win because he had the best pitch. He won because he didn't beg for belief. He made everyone else listen first, and that's the shift. The first time you don't react. The first time you hold your ground without tension, without twitching, you realize something brutal and freeing. You never needed to prove anything. You only needed to stop giving them something to poke. They expected you to explain. You gave them a mirror instead. That's when the game changes, not with louder arguments, but with quieter eyes. Most people think silence means doing nothing, but real silence is active, intentional, alive. It's not what you say. It's how you hold the room without needing to say it. Ethan learned that the hard way. Not online, not in conflict, but in a stainless steel elevator going up to the 29th floor of a glass tower in the heart of downtown. He didn't know she'd be in there. Victoria Hale, executive director, sharp, elegant, unreadable. He'd seen her speak in panels. Heard rumors of how she dismantled people with one sentence. This was not someone you impressed with credentials. The doors closed, just them, no small talk, no smile, just silence, and for the first 5 seconds, Ethan felt it, the pull to speak, to fill the quiet with something safe. He almost opened his mouth, but stopped instead. He stood tall. Relaxed his jaw, dropped his shoulders, breathed once, held the space, not in arrogance, in certainty. Victoria glanced sideways, said nothing, but her energy changed. Her eyes softened barely. That was the entire exchange. 40 floors of no words, but presence. That was loud. You see, the body speaks before the mouth does. People feel tension before they hear tone, and the most powerful thing you can do in any room is walk in like you don't need to be seen. Like you're not waiting for permission, like your silence is not an absence, but a signal. Because silence, when filled with presence, becomes pressure, and pressure breaks weak performances. Ethan started practicing it everywhere, in hallways, in meetings, in pauses. He trained stillness like a discipline. It wasn't easy. His mind would scream for something to do, to nod, to comment, to fix the silence, but he learned to wait, to hold, to watch, and he started to notice something. When he stopped rushing to speak, people leaned in. When he made eye contact without apology, they dropped theirs. When he stood without flinching, they questioned their footing. That's when he realized stillness isn't passive, it's commanding. It's the moment you stop chasing reaction and start directing reality, because when you say nothing, but your energy says everything, that's when your silence starts to speak louder than any defense ever could. Strength is when you feel it, but don't act on it. Immunity is when you don't feel it at all. Most people call themselves strong, but what they really mean is, I can still feel the sting, I just hide it well. But true power, it's when you don't even register the sting, when the insult floats past you like dust through a window. Seen, but untouched. Ethan didn't always have that. He used to feel everything, every look, every tone. Every off comment that wasn't meant for him, but somehow landed anyway, and then came the message. It was a voice note from someone he once cared about, someone who knew exactly where to aim. She said things that weren't cruel, but calculated. Softly spoken, wrapped in disappointment. You've changed. You don't feel as real anymore. You're cold now. And for a few seconds, Ethan felt the heat rise, the need to respond, to clarify, to tell her he wasn't cold, just clear. That he still cared, that she was wrong. He hovered over the reply, his thumbs shook. Then he stopped. He pressed play again, listened in silence, no breathing, no movement, just a still body absorbing an emotional storm. And something incredible happened. The second time through, the words sounded different, less true, less urgent. More desperate. He didn't reply, he didn't delete, he didn't block, he just archived it and let it go. That was the day he stopped being strong and started becoming immune, because strong still flinches, still processes, still bleeds a little, but immune, you don't even feel the blade, it passes through air, no story, no trigger, no wound. Immunity comes when you no longer take things personally, not because you've hardened, but because you've outgrown the need for reaction. And that's what most people never realize. You don't need thicker skin, you need clearer sight. You need to see their comment, their tone, their disapproval, as noise, not a signal, just someone knocking on a door that no longer opens. Because when you become immune, not numb, not cold, but still, utterly still, you stop playing defense. And you start playing design. You don't resist the world anymore, you sculpt it, with every choice not to react. With every moment you let pass without picking it up. That's not silence, that's sovereignty, and it's how real power feels, not loud. Not praised, just untouchable. It didn't happen in a boardroom. It didn't happen online. It happened at a rooftop bar. Friday night, drinks in hand, people talking louder than they need to, everyone trying to look like they belong. Ethan was standing near the edge of the crowd, half listening, half watching the skyline. Then it came, light, casual, smiling, but it was a jab. Jason, someone he barely knew, tilted his glass and said, "Man, you always walk in like you own the room." Then he laughed. So did a few others. Not because it was funny, but because they didn't know what else to do. That was the moment. Every eye shifted, not to Jason, to Ethan. They weren't watching the joke, they were watching the reaction, and that's where most people crumble. They chuckle, they say, "No, not at all." They explain, they soften, but Ethan didn't smile, didn't nod, didn't blink. He let a breath move through him, and then calmly asked, "Is that how you feel?" Oh, that's it, 6 words, but those 6 words did something no defense ever could. They flipped the frame. Now Jason had to justify. Now he was on trial. He stuttered. "Oh no, I mean, just messing with you." He waved his hand like it was nothing. But it wasn't, because now everyone saw it. The deflection, the shift, the imbalance. Jason tried to look relaxed, but his shoulders tightened. He sipped his drink too quickly. He looked for someone else to laugh with. No one jumped in. Ethan didn't say another word. He didn't need to, because what he did, what most never learn to do, was turn the mirror when you're attacked. Your first instinct is to defend, to make the accusation go away, but the smarter move is to let it echo in the attacker's own voice. Because when someone throws a punch that doesn't land, they look weaker, and when they have to explain the punch, they look desperate. That's the art, not resistance, reflection. You don't meet pressure with pressure, you meet it with poise. Let their emotion become their exposure, let their sarcasm become their confession, because here's the truth. Most people don't mean what they say what they think gives them power, but when it doesn't work, when it doesn't rattle you, they're left holding the echo of their own insecurity, and the crowd, the room, the silent witnesses. They always notice who holds their center. They always remember who stayed calm. You don't have to destroy anyone. You don't have to push back. You just have to not fall, because in that stillness, in that quiet return of the question, you let them feel what they were hoping to make you feel, and that is how you win without ever needing to fight. Not every attack comes with a raised voice. Some come in lowercase, soft, sweet, wrapped in love. And that's what makes them dangerous. Ethan learned this in the quiet of a Sunday evening, not at work, not on stage, but in his own apartment. He was sitting on the couch, the city humming outside, next to someone he cared about. She didn't yell. She didn't accuse. She just looked at him and said, "You don't really care about me anymore, do you?" It wasn't a question, it was a trap, not malicious, just emotional, built from fear, not facts, and Ethan felt it. That instant punch to the chest, that sudden urge to fix. He wanted to say, "Of course I care. You know I do. Where is this coming from?" But this time, he didn't. He didn't raise his voice, didn't lean forward. Didn't defend his heart like a lawyer. He just sat there, looked her in the eyes, and said, "That's not how I see it." 7 words, no anger, no panic, just steady breath, and it shifted everything. She blinked. The power in her voice softened. She paused, not because he overpowered her, but because she suddenly heard herself. That's what silence does. It holds up a mirror. It lets people feel their own weight, because when you don't match their energy, when you don't get pulled into their spiral, you give them something far more valuable than agreement. You give them reflection. Most people don't need a reaction. They need to hear themselves. And when you defend, when you over-explain, you rob them of that moment. You rob yourself of sovereignty. That night, Ethan didn't win an argument. He held a boundary, not by force, but by presence. You don't have to raise your voice to be heard. You just have to anchor deeper than the noise. And in relationships, that's the most powerful move of all. Not proving you're good, not proving you love them, but showing, without flinching, that your peace isn't up for negotiation. Because if your love needs a defense every time it's questioned, it's not love they're measuring. It's control. And when you stop playing that game, when you let the silence stretch between accusation and truth, you teach people how to meet you where you are, not drag you into who they fear you might be. That's not cold, that's clarity, and it's the beginning of real connection, not built on reactivity, but on rooted presence. There's a tactic colder than silence. It's not stillness, it's absence, not walking away in anger, not slamming the door, just disappearing with no explanation. Ethan didn't learn this in a meeting. He didn't read it in a book. He learned it in the digital wild. The comment came late at night, a thread full of assumptions, half-truths, and indirect digs. He read it once, felt the familiar urge rise to respond, to correct, to clarify, but this time he didn't. He didn't type, didn't reply, didn't even like the post. He just vanished. He let the words sit there, unchallenged, unfed, alone, and the person who posted, they waited, they checked, refreshed, posted again. Funny how quiet people get when the truth hits. Is still nothing, then they posted more. Tried harder, louder, longer, until it started to look less like truth and more like obsession, and that's when the shift happened. The audience is silent until now started to feel it. Not pity, not defense, just doubt. Doubt in the one who kept talking. Doubt in the one who couldn't let go. Doubt in the one who looked like they needed attention. While Ethan looked like he had moved on, because absence doesn't just withhold energy, it forces people to carry their own weight. Silence is powerful, but absence makes them echo. You don't block them, you don't call them out. You don't rise above it, you just stop being available, and when someone fights to get your attention, and you give them nothing, they start to unravel, because the average person survives off emotional validation, even in conflict, even in hate. And when you take that away, you strip them of their stage, no spotlight, no audience. Just them and the noise they thought would break you. It doesn't, it fades, not because you silenced them, but because you showed them. You were never in the room to begin with. That's not passive, that's precision, because when they realize you don't even need to exist in the conversation to control it, that's when fear replaces anger and power replaces defense. You didn't fight them, you let them perform their collapse, and the crowd, they always remember who stood still and who spiraled without a single reply. Most people think power is about proving you're right, that the way to win is to convince, correct, clarify, but real power doesn't need approval. It reclaims control through perception. Ethan once believed the same myth, that to be respected, he had to be understood, that silence meant surrender, that people would get the wrong idea unless he fixed it. But over time, he saw the truth. The people who rise highest, they're not the ones always explaining themselves. They're the ones who know the secret. Every time you defend, you validate the attack. You make their words real. You invite the trial. And in that trial, you are always the accused. So instead of arguing, Ethan started reframing. He stopped reacting to accusations. He turned them into mirrors. Oh, you're arrogant. It is strange how confidence unsettles the insecure. You're fake. Everyone says that when they stop getting what they want. Oh, you think you're better than everyone. And no, I just think differently. Each phrase short, clean. Unapologetic, not defenses, not comebacks, just calibrated reframes, because that's what most people miss. The game isn't about truth. It's about framing. If you accept their frame, you lose. If you bend to their emotion, you lose. But if you keep your center, you make them question their own narrative. And the more they talk, the more they reveal what they were hiding behind the accusation. Envy, control, fear, insecurity. Ethan mastered this not by being cruel, but by being unmoved. He let them speak, he watched them perform, and he answered not with apologies, but with redirection. Because when someone accuses you with emotion, and you respond with stillness, they feel it, not just the words, the energy. You don't flinch, you don't chase, you don't dance, and suddenly, they're performing for an audience that's no longer watching. The spotlight shifts, their voice cracks, and the crowd starts to notice the imbalance, because here's the paradox. The more they try to expose you, the more they expose themselves, not through your argument, but through their escalation. That's when power becomes effortless, not from the words you speak, but from the weight you never had to lift. And in that quiet weight, people don't just respect you, they fear misjudging you, because you gave them nothing to push. Nothing to fight, nothing to use, only silence, and the unsettling feeling that they lost a battle you never entered. There comes a point when you no longer need to defend your name, not because it's been cleared, but because your silence became its own reputation. Ethan reached that point without fireworks. There was no final confrontation, no grand statement. Just stillness, patterned, consistent, unshakable. People stopped challenging him, not because they agreed, but because they didn't want to risk being the next to unravel, because something happens when you build a presence so composed, so precise, that even your silence feels like a move. It starts slow. At first, they try to bait you. Then they start second-guessing themselves. Eventually, they go quiet, not because you silenced them, but because you trained them. Every time you didn't respond, you were laying a stone. Every time you let the insult echo unanswered, you built a wall. Not to block people out, but to rise above them. That's not distance, that's elevation. And now, people don't just see you. They feel your gravity, the way you walk into a room, the way you pause before you speak, the way your stillness creates tension, without effort, because the truth is, when you don't need the world's permission, you become the one they look to for cues. You don't seek clarity, you command it. You don't demand respect, you embody it. And that difference, that's the edge, because when they realize your silence is never weakness, but design, you stop being questioned, you start being watched, and in that space, something rare is born. A presence that doesn't explain itself, a name that carries weight without noise, a man who answers to no one, not out of arrogance, but because he's written the rules by which he lives. Ethan never needed to win arguments. He only needed to stop playing their game, and now his silence speaks before he enters, and lingers long after he leaves. That's not reputation. That's legacy, and it's built, not with loud victories, but with the discipline to stay quiet until the room bends to your presence.